The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Talk. I'm Chip.
And I'm CJ.
And it's Friday in the Riv. And
It's been a week of politicians.
yeah, a week of election politics and pre-election politics, and you know, we see it all the time. But let's start with the Fall River Beat. We got a lot to say about these politicians. So. Judge orders Fall River to stop charging panhandlers until lawsuit is resolved. Well, again, they are ruling in favor of
The ACLU.
the ACLU and
Isn't it funny? The ACLU comes out for things like panhandlers and crazy stuff like that. But when people like you or I bring them serious violations of our civil rights, they say we can't do anything for you.
That's because we're regular taxpayers. Nobody cares about us.
Right.
Politicians don't care about us. The ACLU doesn't care about us. They want these high-profile news-making cases. They don't want to defend the everyday
No, exactly.
working guy. And like you said, this is a violation of their constitutional right. Said constitutionally guaranteed the freedom of speech. It's always a problem with me, problematic with these judges who make hundreds of thousands of dollars and live in their ivory towers, and none of them live in a three-decker in Fall River or Lawrence or Lowell. They make these rulings because they're protecting their constitutional freedom of speech. If somebody runs up to their vehicle and begins to wash their windows and demands money from them and ties up traffic or causes a traffic accident, I fail to see this as a freedom of speech issue here. This truly is a public nuisance and public safety issue,
right,
in my opinion. And look, I've said it numerous times on the show, as far as I'm concerned, whenever any of these politically appointed, let's make that very clear, politically appointed judges in Massachusetts make a ruling and then something disastrous happens because of that ruling, I think they should suffer the same consequences as the individual who perpetrated the crime. When they let some murderer out after 25 years, first-degree murder, and they kill again, they should go to jail for first-degree murder. They should go, because then it'd stop these pinheads who live in an ivory tower and are not affected by their own, like politicians, aren't affected by their inactions. Politicians will never fix health care in this country because they've got the greatest health care in the world.
That's it, and they don't got to pay for it.
And they don't pay for it. And they got the greatest retirement system in the world. So they don't care if they destroy your retirement system. They don't care that you got shitty health care. Nobody cares, because there's no incentive for them to care. If they had your health care, they'd fix it. But, just like these judges, they don't care. These rulings don't. They're not driving around in communities where there's a million panhandlers. You remember that case years ago, the author, what the hell, he wrote In the Belly of the Beast. What was his name? I can't think of it, and I read the book. He lobbied to get a murderer out of prison exhaustively. And he wrote a book that was based on this individual, In the Belly of the Beast. And he got him out of jail. And either the first day or the second day he was out of jail, he hosted a cocktail party for this murderer. And guess what? He murdered somebody else that night.
That was Jack Abbott.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who wrote that? Jack Abbott wrote that book.
But, it's, this is the kind of, and we never learned, and that was decades ago. Decades ago. These people that are psychopaths and sociopaths and engage in premeditated murder, and that's a big key. This is not two guys get into a barroom fight, one guy punches the other guy, and the other guy hits his head on a bar and dies, which is unfortunate, obviously. But he's charged with manslaughter or some other emotional thing, and somebody without any forethought or malice. It's still wrong, obviously, to murder somebody. But remember, our state wants to get parole, first-degree murder convicts, people who premeditated, who thought about it, who planned it, who understood the ramifications. They were taking human life. It wasn't an emotional response. It was a premeditated act. And they're going to let them out. And we've seen what happened when these people have been let out. There have been numerous cases of these people killing another person because they don't, obviously, killing isn't a major issue with them.
Well, another problem that you have when you're dealing with people who are serving life sentences that they want to get rid of now is that they become institutionalized. They can't function in society because they're used to having their day being set up for them. 6 o'clock is, lights on, and you got to get up and get ready. 6:45, you've got to be in the mess hall. You got to eat. 10:15, you got to be at work. So on and so forth. 12 o'clock is count, and they keep doing that, and they're locked into that institutionalized mentality. So when they're put out into the public, they don't know what to do. They're lost.
Yeah, and as you said on the previous show, CJ. That's the college of crime.
Right, it is.
Because you worked in a prison and you know very well what they learn how to do. And you get somebody like this that's been in jail most of their life. They get out, they've gotten their day planned. They get 3 hots and a cot. They get their meals. They get a place to sleep. They get their medical care. Now they get thrown out in the street. They have no skill. They can't get any job. They're criminals to begin with. So you don't think they're going to have to commit crimes in order to survive out on the street? And obviously, because they're criminals by nature, especially these murderers, they have absolutely no filter to stop them from committing it. They don't care about going to jail. They've spent half their life there. And the only way they can survive is perpetrating more crimes. But, they don't normally, when they, it's like catch and release. They're like fish now. Catch and release. But nobody cares because most of the time when they release these people, they don't go to Newton and Wellesley and Needham. They come to Fall River and New Bedford and Lawrence and Lowell. And this is the problem. We kind of got a long way away from panhandlers, but this shows that, there seems the courts, the politicians have absolutely no consideration for the plight of the average person. The guy that has to walk the streets in Fall River at night, live in a 3-decker, work 2 jobs, and then have somebody try to rob him. It's just, frankly, it's disgusting to me. And as I said, these judges live in an ivory tower like our politicians, and that's why I've always been an advocate of electing judges, throwing out every politician at least after give them 2 terms, and it's 2 and gone at the max. And we would not have the problems we have in our society if they had to live the life that we live.
Exactly. You know, the thing about this judgment, well, this is actually an injunction.
Yeah, and
to
it's a
stop-
reaffirmation of
Right.
previous cases.
Exactly. But, you know, this judge, Rathi Yesian, wrote, suspending enforcement is in the public's best interest, in part because doing so protects the constitutionally guaranteed right to free speech. He called the city's concern in the concerns that suspending enforcement would have the unsafe and unsound result of giving panhandlers the green light to stop or accost vehicles, unpersuasive and exaggerated. This is what he said about that argument. On any given day, 6 to 8 people are panhandling in Fall River, according to an affidavit filed by Police Chief Albert Dupere, a number Yesian referred to as minimal. Well, it's nice that he can refer to it as minimal.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah, well, it's minimal. If there were 8 in his town or outside his house at every on-ramp of every road that he drives on,
Yeah.
he would not consider that minimal.
Here's the thing that he wrote that really bothers me. Yesian wrote that Fall River police are not powerless to stop panhandlers from disrupting traffic. The Fall River Police Department can charge panhandlers or solicitors with violations of other offenses. What other offenses?
And then some other judge will throw that out because they'll say it was a misuse of power.
Right.
You know, they're panhandling, and their panhandling is doing it. If they charge them with something else, some other judge will throw that out. These people are so full of crap, it's halfway back here. That's the problem with the judicial system. It's no law. It was intended to be a system of punishment for crimes. It's supposed to be, you know, a system of law that punishes crime for behavior that's against the law and breaks down the social fabric of a society. That's what the judicial system was originally intended for. Hammurabi's Code. They didn't worry about their freedom of speech. They said, well, you know, if you built a building that fell on somebody, Hammurabi would drop a rock on you and crush you like the building crushed. You know, it was like, well, you know, you laugh, and I see you chuckling in there, but you know,
It's the truth, though.
But some of the safest places in the world had this type of system. If you look at Japan in the feudal era, they fundamentally had a code that they also used in their law that is intertwined with their law, called the Code of Bushido, the Warriors Code. And the first precept in that code was rectitude. And for those of you, if you look it up, some of them will erroneously put justice, but rectitude is different than our perception of justice. That's why rectitude is more applicable. Rectitude means you get what you deserve. Like Hammurabi's Code, fundamentally you get put upon you what you perpetrated on somebody else. You get what you deserve. That is true justice. So it's not justice, but you get acquitted on a technicality because somebody had the wrong address on a search warrant, some police officer didn't Mirandize you properly, and you get away with murdering, 28 people, and now they're going to bring in the terrorist, and he bombs a bunch of people, and someone will be trying to plead some obscure thing, and they violated this, and he didn't give them due process, and well, you can think that's great. I don't. I think in order to maintain an ordered society, and those societies were very ordered. If you look around the world, you can go to Japan and walk around with your wallet hanging out. There are very, very few murders over there because they have a tremendously punitive judicial system.
Yeah, get caught drunk driving.
Yeah, get caught drunk driving in Japan. And see if you're on the Channel 10 news 6 months later for mowing down somebody else. It doesn't happen. But every time we talk about judges and politicians, it gets me gets me crazy. So, but look, so again, next time you get aggravated because the panhandlers are bothering you or tying up traffic and cause an accident, call Judge Rafi Yassarian and tell him, thanks a lot, Judgy. And it's ridiculous. The police have got enough things to do in Fall River without having to deal with that.
Well, here's the funny part about this whole lawsuit. I love who the ACLU named as defendants in the lawsuit. The defendants named in the lawsuit are the City of Fall River, Police Chief Albert Dupere, District Attorney Thomas Quinn III, Lieutenant Paul Bernier, Lieutenant David Gouveia, Sergeant James Smith, and Officer Michael Pavo and Officer Derek Amaral. Individuals.
Yeah, well, it's nice when you name people who are basically commissioned to uphold the law and charge them with enforcing the law.
Right, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
I mean, yeah, that's the thing. Because, as we said, again, judges consider themselves above the law. They're going to tell law enforcement how to enforce the law. The next time the judge goes in for brain surgery, he should tell the neurosurgeon what to do.
Yeah, why not?
Because, but of course, they charge law enforcement officials who are interpreting the law, and they're saying, well, my interpretation is better. Just like politicians when they say, we know what's good for you.
Right.
Even though you told me to do this, I'm not going to do it because I've already forgotten that I'm supposed to be your representative. I know better. So now the judges and politicians, because let's face it, CJ, judges are politicians in black robes.
That's it.
Because they're elected and they're appointed by politicians.
That's right.
Unless you come from a state that elects your judges, and then you're to blame if you got a clown on the bench. If you come from a state like Massachusetts where judges become judges because they're politically connected, they are politicians. Let's not confuse that. As far as I'm concerned, they should be removed from the Constitution of Massachusetts because they technically are politicians, even though the Constitution says all elected people, because they're not elected.
Right.
So they're fundamentally appointed by politicians.
What's very interesting is the Massachusetts bar has come out every time the question of judges being elected, they come out against it. And they said that the sentencing by the judges would be based upon the opinions of the people that elected them. That's right.
That's right. Isn't that what it says in the Constitution? Of course the Mass Bar would say that because every one of them is looking for a judgeship at some point in their career.
Someone is.
Of course. So, hey, it is what it is. So all seats are now filled in a Fall River Board of Elections. Isn't that a wonderful thing? Isn't that a wonderful thing?
Yeah, well, the reason why it's filled is, who was it? Manny Lee?
Manny Lee.
Manny Lee came back. He quit the other board he was on because he wanted to be on the Elections Commission. And the city council approved him. Yeah. And Kelly Souza Young was also appointed to the 4-member board by Mayor Jason Correa and approved by the city council last week, as was member Manny Lee. It's really interesting. Lee is returning as a board member after he left the position before the recall election. The election board is made up of 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans. I have a problem with that because the votes will be evenly split. You can't get anywhere. There's no.
Not only that, how about us poor independents?
Yeah.
What do we call it? Unenrolled or whatever.
Unenrolled, yeah.
Whatever a euphemism they use. The people like me who have never been a Democrat or a Republican. I voted in both primaries when I had a candidate that I supported, but fundamentally I have been an independent, unenrolled, or, but unenrolled but not uninformed my entire life. So. But, like you said, I object to I think that the makeup of the board is prejudicial.
Yeah.
Why should you have 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans? All you got to do is look at Washington and see why we shouldn't have parties, because they don't do anything.
But the interesting part is the unenrolled outnumber.
That's right.
Both of these clowns.
That's right. And it's like, you know,
and we have no representation.
And you look at Washington, they're doing absolutely nothing. They, 2 years of the Mueller investigation, the Democrats want to continue this dialogue because there's an election coming up. But the bottom line is the people of the United States are looking at these idiots up there saying, did we send you up there to do any business except whining about who got elected 2 years ago as the president of the United States? Can you actually do something in Washington besides trying to pick apart every sentence and reinvestigate the investigation because it didn't come out the way you wanted it? You see, you can't do that, and I can't do that, but politicians can. If you lose an arbitration, you can't appeal it to court. You can, but you'll lose unless you can prove that the decision in an arbitration was based on perjury or some legal tenet outside the fact of what the arbitration was about. Because if you don't like the decision, tough crap.
You're locked with it.
You lost. You lost it. You went there, you pleaded your case, you lost it. And because you don't like the outcome, you just can't keep re-arbitrating it until you find somebody like a whiny 5-year-old that wants his way and will keep appealing until you cave. Can't do that. You can't do that. I can't do that. Unions can't do that. But politicians can. And what are they doing in Washington? What are they going to be doing for the next 2 years? Talking about everything else except health care. They'll talk about it. They'll do nothing.
Immigration.
They won't do anything. The hell with all this stuff. Let them murder people. Let them come in. The only time they'll talk about it is when it is in light of we can attack the other party. And, that's horse manure. But while we're on politics, Biden pumps up labor amid strike. 2020 speculation. And this is from Matt Murphy, State House News Service. Joe Biden says, this is a quote from Joe Biden. I know you're used to hearing political speeches, and I'm a politician. I get it. But this is way beyond that, guys. It's way beyond that. This is wrong. It's morally wrong. And as I go around this country, I've had enough of it, and so will you. I lifted a couple words. And Biden faulted the parent company of Stop&Shop, Ahold, as we said, very appropriate name, Ahold Delhaize. I'm not good with my Dutch, but for seeking concessions from workers. Now listen to this. To show you the difference between the rich and the poor and the politicians and the regular people, this thing really highlights it. Look at the different perspectives. He says, for seeking concessions from workers after netting nearly $4 billion in profits over 2 years and getting what he said was $250 million tax cuts. $250 million in tax. We talk about TIFs, we talk about tax cuts. And he also questioned a move to buy back billions worth of stock to increase the value of the remaining stock to the benefit of shareholders and top executives. The rich get richer. What do we say on the show all the time?
Yeah.
And then the other side of the coin, the Massachusetts Fiscal Alliance spokesman means we're worried about how much money you spend, but I want all of it. Said that the strike is out of touch. And he says, it's a great opportunity for an elected official to figuratively give our employer community a warm embrace. So he wants him to embrace the company that's making $4 billion, gave their stockholders an 11.1% increase in their dividends, give them a warm embrace. They already got $250 million back in taxes, in tax cuts. So if you continue to elect these pinheads in Washington and in our state that allow this kind of stuff to happen, because this is the other side. They don't care about workers' rights. If they had their way, everybody would work for minimum wage, have no health benefits, no benefits at all. You'd be on your own, or in their vernacular, they would say, it's up to you to pull yourself up by your bootstraps while I make billions of dollars sitting in Holland or Puerto Rico or the Canal Zone or wherever, or in Bangladesh, wherever you move your headquarters to, or Mexico. And you guys, you guys can all get screwed. Nobody cares about you. Nobody cares about Stop&Shop workers. They're minimum wage, mostly part-time. This is what they wanted. This is what they want in this country. And if that doesn't anger you, I don't know what the hell can anger you. And as Biden did say somewhere in this article, he said, he talked about, this is a quote, the middle class built America, unquote. Quote, and you know who built the middle class, unions, unquote. Yeah, we built America. We built a railroad with Chinese labor that was getting paid virtually nothing and being persecuted, coming from the West Coast to meet in the middle with Irish labor from the East Coast that were being persecuted and getting crap in the middle. And the railroad magnates made millions of dollars, and that was in the 1800s. So nothing's changed. This is the 2000s.
Do you notice what always happens? It's abuse of the worker.
Yeah.
Abuse of power.
That's right.
And we have abuse of power just with our politicians. And this strike has brought every politician out of the woodwork. I mean, even Pocahontas came out. Okay, and she gave Dunkin' Donuts coffee to the strikers. Okay, she gave coffee to them. You had Bernie Sanders who issued a statement. All presidential candidates taking issue with Ahold Deleuze or whatever it is.
Ahold.
Yeah, Ahold.
Ahold. We'll just call him Ahold. It's quicker and it's much more appropriate.
Yes,
yeah.
Exactly. But and I support a worker's right to strike. I support the worker's right to unionize. I don't support them attacking people.
No.
Okay, I don't support damaging people's vehicles because they pulled into the parking lot. You got to remember, all of these stores have banks and pharmacies in them that are not associated with the company. And people who pull in to go into the bank, like businesses, because they need a change order or whatever, get slammed every time you turn around. And they post videos when they're slamming people. Hey, if somebody went in there and they bought something, you say, hey, you crossed our picket line. Why don't you support us? There are a few people, I guess, that were hired as temporary help. They're scabs. They're not attacking them, but they're making it clear you're a scab. Yeah. And that's fine. But don't step down to the level of the employer who wants to make you look like the bad guy because you're doing it.
Well, you have to blame, you have to look at the leadership. They should get an education in labor history. One of my favorite all-time books, Labor's Untold Story. Get it? It's an old book. It's probably at the library, and I excerpt it a lot. Talks about how many union people were murdered. We remember when they hired the Pinkertons to squash strikes. They hired thugs to kill labor leaders. But we don't do the same thing. Like you said, you can be peaceful, you can be vocal, you can exercise your rights. There should be no violence on the picket line. But there also has been a lack of respect, too.
Exactly, and that's the
for
problem.
People and for unions now. Because, look, I don't believe in predatory unions either. But the fact is that unions are the people who protect the guy who won't kiss the boss's butt.
That's it. Hey, everyone, have a happy Easter, happy Passover, and have a good weekend. We'll see you on Monday.
Don't shoot the Easter bunny either.